All right, entry cost. So I'm going to break this down into two parts. First one is deposit. So everyone knows you need some form of deposit. Really? Well, not always. Case by case, Sam. Case by case. There are 100%, 105% loans, but the main difference with commercial is you need a bigger deposit. So at the moment, there's 4 or 5 lenders doing 80% loans. So like ANZ, BOQ, Liberty, Think Tank, doing 80% loans, full doc. So you can get 20, 25, 30-year loans, full doc. That's the maximum you can get LVR. Most of the other lenders, you're talking 70%, some of them 65%. So there's a much bigger entry cost to commercial. And this is probably the biggest negative with commercial, because you go buy $1 million property on a 70% LVR, you've got 300 grand just for the deposit. And I'm not even talking the other purchasing costs, which is going to next, like stamp duty and like the actual other costs. So there's a big chunk of money. There's more skin in the game. Yes, you can still pull equity from another property. So you can pull 30% out from a residential. So it doesn't necessarily have to be physical cash that you have in your pocket. So you can leverage, but the LVRs are generally lower, which means price to entry is a lot harder for commercial. So that's the big one, the deposit going into that. And then that flows on to obviously the general acquisition costs. So everyone knows stamp duty, generally around 3.3 to 3.5%. However, check with the local state that you're buying in what the stamp duty is, because some people fall into a trap. There are some higher stamp duties for some certain type of commercials. Inversely, ACT, South Australia, under a couple mil, 0% stamp duty. So there's no stamp duty at all. That's probably a benefit over the residential. So that's part of look at that. But then general acquisition costs, you do have the same as residential. So you've got conveyancer, got build and pest inspection, you have the body corporate report. The main difference is you actually have to pay for a valuation with commercial. So residential, they do a desktop kind of comparable where they go, oh, yep, 3-bedroom house sells for this. This, they sort of do like half of my due diligence report. They check that, like, they risk the property, who the tenant is, comparable sales, rentals. That costs generally between $800 and $1,500 for a mum and dad type client, like property, like a kind of 500K to 2 mil type one. The points to point out though is conveyancing costs a little bit more as well because it's more involved. So where resi, you're like, oh, I can get this for $1,400. Don't go to a conveyancer that charge $1,400. You're probably looking around $2 to $4 grand, including the searches and lease reviews and things like that. Some of the bigger ones you're paying $7 grand, $8 grand, $9 grand, etc., because there's multiple lease reviews, there's a higher risk, more searches and things like that. So bit more kind of fat you need for the conveyancing and the valuation. And then one that sometimes gets forgotten is there's loan application fees for certain types of loans. So that can be a percentage as well, which that can sneak up on you as well. Like that can be 0.5% here and there. If you're a foreign investor as well, it's even larger. So they're the main kind of purchasing costs. And then, like I said, the searches. And then if any, like insurances that you want as well. So if you want to get like some form of protection for the insurance, like loss of rent and things like that, you've got that as well. The other big one is machinery breakdown. So like that's the one we generally encourage. If you're buying a property with a really expensive refrigeration or aircon system, to risk mitigate and have a buffer, you can get insurance for that. So if it blows up and the tenant's not there anymore, you're not left with a 50, 60 grand bill.
Yeah. So insurance. Wow. Okay. Just went through it all. You said loan application fees can be, a bit of a percent. Now, so stamp duty is 3 to 3.5%. So when you're looking at $1 million property, you're looking at 30 to 35 grand, maybe a little bit more.
Yeah. My quick back of the envelope check, I do 35 grand. So 3.5% as a buffer. And then I'm actually working on an online calculator right now, but normally you'd go to the state revenue website, and for commercial, they'll have kind of tiers. So it'll be like, based on this is how much the stamp duty is going to be. And that's actually probably one we'll throw into this mix. I was going to save that for ongoing costs, but land tax is obviously something you've got to be mindful of. If you're over the threshold, then you've got that land tax bill. Good thing with commercial, if you're buying a property that's generally over the land tax threshold by itself, it's considered an outgoing and the tenant will pay it. But if you've got lots of little $1 million properties, like for me, for instance, I can't say to my tenant, hey, because I'm a wealthy investor, do you mind paying that 20 grand bill? That's an account I need to kind of look after as well.
Yeah. I would also add, to transaction, like in the entry cost is, I think it's necessary. You're not going to say it, Steve. Well, you would be an advocate for it, but it's buyer's agent fee. I think that's absolutely imperative. I wouldn't be buying property. I don't even buy resi without a buyer's agent, let alone commercial. So that's definitely a fee that needs to be considered, I believe.
Yeah, and again, just budget that based on who you're kind of talking to.